My name is Lauren, and I'm 36 years old, working from home. My husband, Daniel, and I got married 3 years ago when we were both 33. We wanted children right away, so we saw a doctor for fertility advice. Thankfully, everything was fine, but despite our patience, we couldn't conceive. Just as we were about to give up, Daniel insisted we needed a child, especially a son, as his mom and sister said the family needed an heir. I sighed, confused. Daniel is a good husband but is a bit of a mama's boy and always goes along with whatever his mother says. I don't have the best relationship with my mother-in-law. Daniel is her oldest son and has a younger sister who left home early because their mom always favored Daniel, since his job often requires moving. He was working near his parents' home when we married. He warned me he might get transferred, but I thought I could live anywhere as long as we were together. However, when we rented a house near his parents, my mother-in-law frequently came over, even on his days off or while I was working from home. She'd often criticize how I cleaned or did laundry, which was incredibly frustrating. She also kept asking when we'd have a child, saying it needed to be a boy and not a girl. I tried to explain how stressful her visits were, but Daniel would just say, "She's trying to get along with you," which wasn't helpful. I was initially drawn to Daniel's optimism, feeling we balanced each other out, but this was a big issue between us. Thankfully, Daniel got transferred 6 months ago, so we could finally move away. Our new home is close to my parents, only about an hour away, and it's in a well-developed area, unlike the farm fields surrounding his parents' place. Once we moved, my stress eased, and I could focus on work. Our life became much more comfortable. Then, just recently, I found out I was pregnant. Daniel and I were thrilled, even though I had some concerns about my age. When we shared the news with his parents, his mom's first comment was, "It's a boy, right?" Even though Daniel explained we didn't know the gender yet, she insisted it had to be a boy, but we found out it was a girl. When she heard, my mother-in-law called me while Daniel was out and cruelly said, "You're useless. Why did you marry into this family?" I was devastated and broke down in tears. When Daniel came home, he got upset when I told him, asking if I was saying his mother was wrong, which only made me cry more. Despite his reaction, he still took care of me and helped with household chores, which showed he was a good husband as long as his mother wasn't involved. After giving birth safely, I stayed in my hometown for a month. When Daniel picked me up to go back home, we were surprised to find my mother-in-law already there. I didn't expect her to be excited to see her granddaughter, so I felt uneasy. Daniel, though, didn't notice and cheerfully told me his mom was there to help. While he was in the other room with our baby, my mother-in-law pulled a box of cake from the refrigerator. "This is to celebrate your childbirth," my mother-in-law said, handing me a cake box with a smug smile. "I'm sure you didn't get to enjoy any good food out there in the countryside during your recovery." Her words were irritating, but I tried to let it go. Then, she added, "This cake cost $500. I was shocked. I'd never heard of a cake that expensive. Curious, I put the box on the table and opened it, but the smug expression on her face felt strange. When I opened the box, I was disappointed. The cake didn't look like anything worth $500. The whipped cream was dried out, and while there were fruits on top, they were just canned oranges. I wondered which bakery would sell such a cheap-looking cake for so much money. I usually love sweets and enjoy cakes of any kind, but this was the first time I'd felt disappointed just opening a cake box. Then, my mother-in-law smiled and asked, "So, how's the $500 cake?" I felt my patience snap. I threw the whole box and the cake straight into the trash. "Please leave," I shouted. My husband rushed in, hearing the commotion. Before I could explain, my mother-in-law started crying, saying, "Lauren is being so mean," and pointed to the trash can. My husband looked inside, furious. "What the hell did you do?" "My mom went through all the trouble to make that cake." I didn't get the chance to tell him about the so-called $500 cake. My mother-in-law quickly added, "Yes, that's right. I made it, so it's worth $500. Everything suddenly made sense. She had made the cake herself, and there was no way it would cost $500, not even $5. As I was taking this in, my husband yelled, "Lauren, apologize to Mom." I realized he would always take her side, no matter what. Standing there in shock, I heard our daughter crying in the other room, so I went to comfort her. When she finally calmed down, I came back to the living room and found a note. They had gone out to eat and said I should reflect on my actions. I was stunned and unsure if I could go on living here with my husband. Part of me wanted to run back to my parents, but I felt guilty for needing their support again. As I considered my options, I looked at the trash can where I'd thrown the cake and decided, on a whim, to take a photo of it. Then, I called my parents and told them everything. My dad immediately offered to come pick me up. I felt bad for my newborn daughter, having to move again, but I knew it would be better for both of us than staying here. My husband, who'd gone out with his mother, didn't come back quickly. My dad arrived first, and while he was loading my things into his car, my husband and mother-in-law finally returned. They were both surprised to see my father there, and got angry when they saw him carrying my belongings. Running back to your parents again, huh? My husband sneered. You run to them every time there's a problem. His tone was harsher than usual, and he smelled of alcohol. His face flushed. Seeing him like this, I lost my temper. You went drinking, leaving me and your newborn daughter alone at home? I replied angrily. Right now, I don't want to be anywhere near you two, so yes, I'm relying on my parents. My mother-in-law, also smelling of alcohol, chimed in with a mocking tone. Good riddance. We don't need a daughter-in-law like you. Her comment got under my skin. Fine, I'll take my daughter and go, I shot back. Enjoy your time with Daniel. My husband looked confused, but I ignored him and got into my father's car. My dad kept calm and didn't say much, though I could tell he was holding back his own emotions. The next day, my husband called, sounding confused. Where are you? I was shocked when I woke up and you were gone. I sighed, remembering that he tends to forget things when he drinks. Don't you remember? You left me and our hungry daughter at home to go out drinking with your mom. After how you two treated me, I couldn't stay there. He sounded surprised and flustered, but I could hear my mother-in-law in the background, which reignited my anger. So, your mom stayed over? I won't return to a home where such a rude person is staying. What do you mean? He asked, his tone shifting. She might be your mother, but she's a stranger to me. I'm exhausted from giving birth and don't have the energy to put up with her anymore. Do you even realize she was part of the reason we struggled to get pregnant? Her constant visits stressed me out. The moment we moved away, I got pregnant, but when I came home with our daughter, your mom was there again. I just can't take it. I knew my words were harsh, but I couldn't hold back after everything I'd been through. Then, my husband shouted over the phone, "You're the worst. Come back right now and apologize to my mom." I was shocked and didn't know if I could continue living with my husband. I thought about going back to my parents, but I felt torn. I had no other place to go. As I stood there, I glanced at the trash can where I had thrown the cake. It was still there, untouched. On a whim, I took a picture of it. When I called my parents and told them everything, my dad said he'd come pick me up right away. I felt bad for my newborn daughter, having to move again, but I knew this was better for us than staying in that toxic environment. My husband, who had gone out for a meal with his mother, didn't return as quickly as I expected. My dad arrived first, and as he was loading my belongings into his car, my husband and mother-in-law finally came home. They looked surprised to see my dad and got angry when they saw him carrying my things. Running back to your parents again? My husband sneered. You just run to them every time something goes wrong. His words were unusually harsh, and he smelled of alcohol, his face red. Seeing him like that, I couldn't hold back anymore. You went drinking, leaving me and your newborn daughter alone? I said, furious. Right now, I don't want to be anywhere near you two. That's why I'm relying on my parents. Then my mother-in-law, who also smelled like alcohol, added, good riddance. We don't need a daughter-in-law like you. Her comment cut deep, and I snapped. Fine, I'll take my daughter and go. Enjoy your time alone with my husband, Daniel. My husband looked confused, but I ignored him, got into my dad's car, and left. My dad kept his emotions in check and didn't get involved. The next day, my husband called, sounding surprised. Where are you? I woke up and you were gone. I sighed. Don't you remember? You left me and our hungry daughter to go out drinking with your mom. After how you two treated me, I couldn't stay there. He seemed shocked and flustered, but I could hear my mother-in-law in the background, which made my anger flare up again. So, your mom stayed over? I said, I won't return to a home where someone that rude is staying. What do you mean? He asked, sounding defensive. She might be your mother, but she's a stranger to me. I just gave birth and don't have the energy to deal with her. Don't you realize she was part of the reason we couldn't get pregnant sooner? Her constant visits stressed me out. As soon as we moved away from her, I got pregnant, but when I came back with our daughter, there she was again. I can't stand this. I knew my words were harsh, but I couldn't hold back after everything that had built up. My husband then yelled over the phone, "You're the worst. Come back right now and apologize to my mom." I stopped my husband and said, "Just stay there, your father should be arriving soon." Then, I hung up. In reality, my own dad was so furious about how my husband had treated me that he contacted my in-laws directly. He explained everything that happened, and my father-in-law, who didn't know the full story, apologized repeatedly and promised he'd go talk to my husband about it. By evening, my husband and in-laws showed up at my parents' house. As soon as he walked in, my husband bowed deeply, apologizing. "I had no idea what was going on," he said. "I didn't know my mother was saying those things to Lauren." I looked at him, feeling cold. "Isn't it a little late to say you didn't know? We talked about this when we lived near your parents, but you brushed it off, saying she just wanted to be close to me. You didn't do anything to help back then," I replied. My words made him turn pale. "And you always told me that your mom insisted we have a son," I continued. "Are you planning to keep following everything she says? Since you chose her over me, maybe you don't really need me at all." "No, that's not true. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to," he stammered, grasping for words. "Then what did you mean?" I shot back. He fell silent, looking down. "Daniel," I said, "you chose your mom over your own wife and daughter. Your mom's obsession with you has made you a mama's boy. I should have realized sooner. No wonder your sister left home early." At this, my husband defensively said, "I'm not a mama's boy. I care about you, too." "Then can you really cut ties with your mother?" I challenged. He went silent again. My mother-in-law, who had been brought there by my father-in-law, suddenly shouted, "How can you ask him to do that? Daniel and I are mother and son. We can never sever our bond." My father-in-law tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop. "To be honest, I never liked you," she continued, her words bitter. "I wanted a younger wife for Daniel." "Fine," I replied. "Then I'll cut ties with you right now. I've already prepared divorce papers. If we get divorced, we can be strangers." My husband looked at me, his face pale. "I don't want to be with someone who would write such nasty things on a cake plate," I said. I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the picture I'd taken of the cake, with the words, "Take your daughter and leave" written on it. Seeing this, my father-in-law, who hadn't known the full extent of the situation, turned red with anger and yelled at his wife, "You did this to your own daughter-in-law? After what you did to our daughter?" I was shocked to hear this. Apparently, she had once done something similar to her own daughter, serving a birthday cake with a cruel message on it. "You're a burden to this family." The room went silent, and everyone's eyes turned toward my mother-in-law, whose face was now a mix of shock and shame. My husband looked at his mother, visibly shaken, as if seeing her for the first time. My father-in-law was horrified, clutching his head as if grappling with the realization of just how deep her cruelty ran. I took a deep breath, feeling a wave of clarity amidst the tension. "This isn't just about me," I said, looking at my husband. "Your mother's behavior has impacted everyone around her, including your sister. And you've been defending it, enabling it, without considering the consequences." My husband, still holding on to me, whispered, "I didn't know. I just thought she was. I thought she only wanted the best for us." "No," I replied firmly. "What she wants is control, and you let her have it every time you choose her over our family." My father-in-law, his face still dark with anger, finally spoke up. "Enough is enough," he said, looking at his wife. "You've gone too far. Your behavior has alienated both of our children. I can't stand by and let you destroy their lives." He turned to me, his expression softening. "Lauren, I apologize deeply for everything you've had to go through. I should have intervened sooner." I nodded, grateful but firm. "Thank you, but it doesn't change the fact that I need to think of what's best for myself and my daughter." I looked at my husband, my heart aching but resolute. "Daniel, I've given you chances to stand up for me, to prioritize our family. I can't keep waiting for you to change." He looked up at me, his eyes desperate. "Please, don't leave. I'll set boundaries with my mother. I promise, I'll do better." "You've said that before," I replied, shaking my head. "And yet, here we are. I can't keep living like this, questioning my place in my own marriage, wondering if I'll always come second to her." My father stepped forward, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. "It's time to go, Lauren." As I turned to leave, my husband reached out one last time. "Please, just give me one more chance," he pleaded. I paused, looking at him with all the hurt and disappointment I'd been carrying. Daniel, if you truly want a life with us, you have to prove it, not with empty promises, but with real change. I need time. And I need space. Maybe, once you've shown that you can be the husband and father we deserve, we can talk. But until then, I'm taking our daughter and leaving. With that, I walked out of the house, my father and daughter by my side, finally feeling the weight of years of resentment and disappointment lift just a little. As we drove away, I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had made the right choice for myself and my daughter.